Caught my best friend stealing from my grandmother's purse at her funeral, and now he's trying to blame it on grief. I'm 28, and I'd been with my fiancée, Alex, 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, and from that night, there was an instant spark. Our relationship was strong, we clicked, we laughed, and everything felt right for years. Alex finished his doctorate in economics just last year and landed a position at the university soon after. I have my master's in media sciences, and although a PhD was an option, I decided I wanted to jump straight into the workforce. But lately, everything had turned upside down. For the past few months, Alex's behavior started shifting in weird and unsettling ways. He'd make a demand one minute, only to withdraw it with an edge of frustration the next. Like the time he insisted we needed to paint our walls from the dark green we both chose to basic white. Why? I asked. He snapped, "For fuck's sake, forget it," and never brought it up again. No matter how many times I asked, he'd brush it off like I was the one being unreasonable. One day, I was curled up on the couch under a blanket, fighting off brutal cramps, binging Netflix after keeping the apartment spotless. Alex walked in and rolled his eyes, got actually mad, because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. I tried to talk it out, but he just waved me off. "Forget it, it's not a big deal." This cycle became the soundtrack to our home. Anytime I tried to get to the bottom of it, ask if I'd done something, if he was stressed at work, it was always, "Everything's fine." But it wasn't. He'd fume in silence, picking at anything and everything. Our apartment, my clothes, his work, sometimes just me. When I finally tried to give him some space, it backfired. I told him I'd go help my parents with some repairs for a few days, and even that was a problem because he also wanted to renovate the apartment. I couldn't win. Then last Monday, I got the text. "We need to talk." My gut dropped, but honestly, after the last few months, I knew what was coming. I'd already started bracing for it. When I got home, he was sitting on the couch, stone-faced. Before I could even take off my jacket, he said, "I want to break up." He instantly launched into a tirade that left me reeling. First, he said he resented me for not going further in my academic career, even though he never mentioned it, and apparently didn't want to upset me. Then, he said when I started making more money, he hated that he felt like I should have the final say financially, despite the fact I had never once said or implied that. That was his own rule, something he imposed, resented, but never talked about. Then he railed against our paint scheme, the couch, yes, even our stupid crockpot. He told me he'd turned down an incredible PhD abroad just because I had already started my job, news to me, because he never said a word about even applying overseas. Only a few months ago, apparently, he'd checked in with a friend thriving in that program and decided I'd ruined his life. According to him, I held too much control over his life and he was terrified of the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and fuck him over, which literally made no sense. He hated that all his friends liked me. He complained that he had no one to vent to about me. Then, he finished it off, "I'm done." Honestly, I was stunned and sick at the same time. I'd made peace with the idea that things were ending. It hurt, but after hearing all of this, I felt nothing but disgust. I must have looked at him with all that written on my face, because I only managed one word, "Okay." That set him off. He exploded, shouting that my calm proved his whole point, that I was cold, that it was horrible. After being together for 4 years, how could I just say okay to our breakup? I just quietly asked if he wanted to keep staying at the apartment until he figured out a new place, and again, he accused me of holding the apartment over his head. He started shouting again, so I just left. When I told my parents, they were just as confused as I was. My dad's advice was practical: reach out to the landlord and see what my options are. I have no worries about covering the rent on my own. Alex just contributed to utilities and some subscriptions, which was never a problem for me. I made more. I was glad to support him while he chased his PhD dream. I never saw it as a burden or slaving away. I always thought of my money as ours, because, well, we were a team, or so I hoped. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, my own independence, but for the things that mattered to us as a couple, I was happy to provide as long as he was working hard and not taking advantage. Now, Alex is still simmering. Some days he's cold and robotic, just texting logistics about splitting up. Other days he's a raging asshole, finding new things to complain about. My feelings of hurt have all but evaporated. Mostly I just feel nauseated by the whole situation. Honestly, I'm just left wondering if I should have reacted differently. Was okay too cold? But after all he said, I didn't have anything else to give him. Now, I have to untangle all the legal stuff. I don't feel like a victim. Something just happened, our relationship soured, and he acted like an ass. But it's clear he doesn't want me involved in whatever's going on, and I need to respect that. After all this is over, I'll be left alone, me and my ugly green walls. Maybe it's finally time to get a cat. Alex was always crazy allergic anyway. Update 1. After Alex and I broke up, he moved out pretty quickly, packing his things and staying with a friend. We worked through the logistics, changing mail, canceling subscriptions, wrapping up the lease, trying to make a clean break. In the middle of all this, I started the process of adopting a cat. Her name is Luna for now, though my family already has pets named Luna, Moon, and Kamar, so I might change it later. She's a scrappy little tabby, still living at her foster home, but every visit makes me more eager to bring her home. She follows her foster mom around like a loyal shadow, and I've already made sure her future with me will be comfortable. Her bowls are lined up, her toys are scattered around, and there's a soft bed by the window waiting for her arrival in the first week of December. But then things took a strange turn. Last week, I spent a day showing a new guy around the city, a favor to my parents. He's the son of family friends, newly arrived for work and completely unfamiliar with the area. My parents trusted me to help him settle in, and honestly, it was harmless. We walked around, grabbed coffee, and I pointed out places he'd need to know. Apparently, Alex saw us together. I didn't even realize he was anywhere nearby, but later that night, my phone started lighting up with texts from a number I didn't recognize. He must have gotten a new number after I'd blocked his old one. Those texts. They quickly became unsettling. He accused me of flaunting some new relationship, insisted I'd been seeing this guy before our breakup, and proclaimed that everything he'd ever suspected about me was true. I refused to respond. I wouldn't feed into his paranoia, but the messages kept coming. They swung from rage to pleading, with lines like "at least admit you were lying to me, and was anything about us even real?" Watching his emotions spiral out of control was both exhausting and frightening. For the record, I have zero romantic interest in this guy, he's just family, in a way, and I was just trying to help. The entire situation was innocent, but Alex decided to paint it as some sort of betrayal. What hurts the most is that his actions make it painfully obvious how little he ever really knew me. I'm not the type to leap into another relationship right after such a messy breakup. Even if I were, it wouldn't be his business. We're done. I made that very clear. After I ignored the texts, Alex stepped things up. He started calling, over and over. I let them ring out, but his voicemails veered between angry diatribes and desperate pleas. Eventually, I blocked the new number too, though I hated that it had even come to that. Then, this past weekend, my friends and I went to a bar for a much-needed night out. Not long after we got there, I saw Alex walk in. Whether it was a coincidence or not, I couldn't tell, but the second he saw me, he made a beeline for my table. He was visibly upset, insisting he needed to talk. I told him no, and my friends intervened before things escalated. Thankfully, he left instead of causing a scene, but his presence lingered, poisoning the mood of my entire night. It felt like I couldn't shake him, no matter where I went or what I did. Later that night, as I finally started to relax at home, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find Alex on my doorstep, crying. Tears streamed down his face as he begged me to talk, said he missed me, that he didn't understand why I was doing this to him, and that he couldn't move on. Gone was the earlier anger, replaced with a desperate sadness that unsettled me even more. I didn't let him in. I told him he had to leave, I'd call someone if he didn't, and shut the door on his pleading. That night, I barely slept, my nerves frayed and anxiety gnawing at me. I reached out to his best friend, explained everything, and asked him to check on Alex. He said he would, and I hope he actually does. Now, I find myself considering serious changes, maybe getting a new phone number, maybe even looking into legal options if this keeps happening. It feels wrong that I have to go to these lengths just to have peace after a breakup, but I don't know what else to do. I just want to be free, just want some breathing room to start again, with my soon-to-be cat and some space to heal. Update 2. Thanks for all the concern and support I've received, I really am fine. A lot of people around me have suggested things like getting a restraining order, but I want to set the record straight, it's not as simple as just walking into an office and requesting one. There's a whole process involved, proving there's an immediate danger to my safety, gathering evidence like calls, texts, or actual witnesses, and then I'd still have to go to court to get it approved. That's not something anyone can do lightly, especially without solid proof. And no, I'm not getting a gun. That's simply not an option for me. I've also heard people diagnose Alex with various mental health problems, and honestly, I wish everyone would stop. Yes, something is clearly not right, but I'm not a doctor, and neither is anyone else speculating about his mind. It's unfair, and not at all helpful, to label him with things like bipolar disorder or worse, especially without real expertise. For what it's worth, I don't even feel like I'm in danger. Over the last month, there've only been those 3 strange incidents. I genuinely don't think he's been actively stalking me, it's more like he knew my patterns. That bar is my favorite spot, and I was there for a close friend's party. It's not a stretch he'd guess I'd be there. When he showed up at my apartment, he knows what time I usually get home. The city tour is the only time I felt something might have been more intentional, but even then, it could have just been a weird coincidence that triggered everything. But now, it's over. Yesterday, Alex came over, with his mother and one of his friends. At first, I didn't even want to let them in, but he promised this would be the last time I ever saw him. I agreed, mostly because his mom and friend were there, and it would have been even more awkward to argue on my own doorstep. We sat down, and Alex admitted he's been going through some kind of crisis. He told me straight out that he was mad at me, even if he wasn't sure why. Apparently, I annoy him, he doesn't like me, but somehow he still loves me, too, which is why he lost it when he saw me with someone else. He made it clear he hasn't been seeing anyone else on his end, either. He confessed he feels like he's going insane. He said he feels judged for being older and not being able to give me the kind of life he thinks I deserve. He hates his colleagues, hates his job, hates pretty much everything right now, and everyone and everything seems to annoy him. He feels old, and says he thinks he's supposed to want kids at this point, but he doesn't, and that thought really terrifies him. He just wants to be alone and not talk to anyone for a while. Throughout most of it I just nodded, honestly not knowing what I could possibly say. When he finished, he told me he was leaving. He's on mental health leave from work, and he said he's leaving the country on Sunday. He's flying to South America, apparently, to spend time in nature and find himself. He thanked me for everything, said he was sorry for how he acted, and just quietly gathered the last of his things from my place and left. His mom was completely inconsolable. She kept apologizing to me again and again, sobbing and telling me how embarrassed she was by his behavior. I reassured her as best I could, telling her she didn't need to apologize for him, but she just cried harder. In the end, his friend had to drive her home after Alex left. I can't even say how I feel about all of this. Part of me is honestly relieved that it's finally over. Another part of me feels profound sadness for him. He clearly doesn't know up from down right now, and has no idea how to deal with what he's feeling. But mostly, what I feel is just exhausted. I'm glad he's decided to take some steps to figure himself out, but it's not my responsibility anymore. Update 3. It's been 3 months since Alex left for South America, and I thought that chapter of my life was finally closed. Luna, I kept the name after all, has settled in beautifully. She's currently sprawled across my laptop keyboard as I type this, which seems fitting given what I'm about to share. Things had been genuinely peaceful. I threw myself into work, started seeing a therapist to process everything that happened, and even began casually dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and the occasional dinner. It felt good to remember who I was outside of that relationship. Then last Tuesday, I got a call from Alex's mom, Patricia. She was crying before I even said hello. He's in the hospital, she managed between sobs. In Ecuador, he had some kind of breakdown, and the embassy called us. They want to fly him home, but he's refusing treatment. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, hearing that Alex was in crisis still affected me more than I expected. Patricia begged me to talk to him. Apparently, he'd been asking for me during his lucid moments. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a phone call. When Alex came on the line, he sounded nothing like the person I'd known for 4 years. His voice was hollow, distant. He kept apologizing over and over, saying he'd figured it out, that he knew what was wrong with him now. He'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was finally getting proper medication, but the adjustment period was brutal. I need you to know I never cheated, he said suddenly. But I thought about it. There was this woman at work, Dr. Martinez. We never did anything, but I wanted to, and I hated myself for it. I think that's why I started resenting you, because I felt guilty. I didn't know what to say. Part of me appreciated the honesty, but it also explained so much about those final months, the random anger, the picking fights, the way he'd look at me sometimes like I'd done something wrong. He's coming back next week. Patricia asked if I'd consider seeing him once he's settled back home, just to give him closure. I told her I'd think about it. But here's where things get complicated. Remember that guy I showed around the city? The one whose appearance triggered Alex's spiral? We've actually been texting pretty regularly since then. His name is David, and what started as friendly check-ins about how he's settling in has evolved into something more. We have plans to go to dinner this weekend, a real date this time. I haven't told anyone about David yet, not even my parents. There's something thrilling about having this private connection, especially after everything with Alex being so public and messy. David is calm where Alex was chaotic, steady where Alex was unpredictable. He listens when I talk instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. But now, with Alex coming back and asking to see me, I feel caught between two worlds. Part of me wants to help him find closure. We did share 4 years together, and if he's genuinely getting help, maybe we can end things on a better note. But another part of me is terrified that seeing him will complicate these new feelings I'm developing for David. David doesn't know about Alex yet, beyond the basic I got out of a long relationship recently. How do you explain to someone new that your ex-fiancé had a mental health crisis partly because he saw you together? I keep staring at my phone, Patricia's number in my recent calls, David's latest text asking if I'm excited about Saturday night. Luna seems to sense my anxiety. She's been extra clingy lately, barely leaving my side. I thought I was done with Alex's chaos affecting my life, but it seems like even from thousands of miles away, he's still managing to complicate everything. The rational part of me knows I don't owe him anything, that I've already given more than enough. But the part of me that loved him for 4 years is struggling with the idea of shutting the door completely while he's clearly in pain. I've got until Saturday to figure out what I'm going to tell David, and until Alex gets back to decide whether I'm ready to face him again. Neither conversation feels easy, but I suppose that's what moving forward looks like: messy, complicated, and nothing like the clean endings you see in movies. For now, I'm just trying to focus on the present. Luna's purring, my apartment finally feels like home again, and for the first time in months, I'm excited about something, or someone, new. Maybe that's enough for today. Update 4. My dinner with David last Saturday was perfect. We went to this little Italian place downtown, and for the first time in months, I felt completely present with someone. No walking on eggshells, no analyzing every word for hidden meanings. David told me about his work in renewable energy, his plans to eventually move back closer to his family, and we laughed until my cheeks hurt. When he walked me to my door, there was this moment where we both knew he was going to kiss me, and it felt so natural, so right. That bubble burst on Monday morning. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. Patricia again, but this time she sounded different, frantic in a way that made my blood run cold. "He's not on the plane," she said without preamble. "Alex was supposed to fly back yesterday, but he never boarded. The embassy can't find him, and his phone is going straight to voicemail." My coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the kitchen floor. Luna bolted from the room at the sound. "What do you mean they can't find him? He left the hospital 3 days ago, said he was feeling better and wanted to see Quito before flying home. But his hotel says he never checked out, and his belongings are still there. His passport, his medication, everything." The next few hours were a blur of phone calls. Patricia begging me to contact anyone who might know something. Alex's friend Jake calling to ask if I'd heard from him. My own parents offering to come over after I told them what was happening. By Tuesday evening, there was still no word. I was pacing my apartment, Luna following me from room to room like a furry shadow, when David texted asking how my day was. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Can we talk? Something's happened." When David arrived, I told him everything. About Alex, about the breakdown, about him being missing in Ecuador. David listened without judgment, his hand steady on mine as I explained why I'd been so vague about my recent relationship. "This is a lot," he said finally, and for a terrifying moment I thought he was going to walk away. Instead, he pulled me closer. "But it's not your fault, and it doesn't change how I feel about you." Wednesday morning brought news, but not the kind anyone wanted. Alex had been found, but he was in a Quito police station. Apparently, he'd been arrested for trying to break into the home of Dr. Martinez, the colleague he'd mentioned having feelings for. She was in Ecuador for a research conference. The pieces started falling into place in the worst possible way. Patricia was hysterical on the phone. He flew all the way there to find her. He's been obsessing over her for months, apparently. The police say he was incoherent, talking about how she was the reason he couldn't love you properly. I felt sick. All those months of him picking fights with me, acting like I was somehow holding him back, and it turns out he'd been in love with someone else the entire time. The guilt he'd mentioned feeling wasn't just about wanting someone else, it was about being completely consumed by her. Jake called later that day with more details. Alex had apparently been texting Dr. Martinez throughout his stay in Ecuador, convinced that if he could just explain himself in person, she'd understand his feelings. She'd blocked his number after the first few messages, which only made him more desperate. "The scary part," Jake said, "is that he seems to genuinely believe she wants to be with him. Like, completely delusional about it. The doctors think it might be a manic episode, but mixed with his obsession. I don't know, man. This isn't the Alex we knew." That night, David came over with takeout and sat with me while I processed everything. Luna had claimed his lap within minutes, purring as he absently scratched behind her ears. "I keep thinking about those last few months," I told him. "All the random fights, the way he'd look at me like I'd done something wrong. I thought I was going crazy." "You weren't crazy," David said firmly. "You were in a relationship with someone who was falling apart and taking it out on you instead of getting help." Thursday brought the call I'd been dreading. Patricia again, but this time with news that Alex was being released to the U.S. Embassy's custody. He'd be deported and would arrive back home Friday night. "He's been asking for you," she said. "I know it's not fair to ask, but, no," I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. "I can't see him, Patricia. Not after this. But maybe if you could just." "He broke into another woman's house because he's obsessed with her," I interrupted. "He spent months making me feel like I was the problem in our relationship when really he was in love with someone else. I'm done." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "You're right," she finally whispered. "I'm so sorry. For all of it." Friday evening, I was curled up on the couch with Luna and David, halfway through a movie, when my phone started buzzing. Text after text from unknown numbers. Alex must have gotten a new phone or was borrowing someone else's. The messages were a scattered mess of apologies, explanations, and declarations that he'd figured everything out now and knew we were meant to be together. He claimed his feelings for Drive Martinez had been a test from the universe to help him realize I was his true love. David read over my shoulder as I scrolled through them, his jaw tightening with each increasingly unhinged message. "We need to call the police," he said. "And tell them what? That my ex is texting me? That your ex was just arrested in another country for stalking behavior and is now contacting you obsessively after you've made it clear you don't want to speak to him." He was right, but part of me still hesitated. This was Alex, who I'd loved for 4 years, who I'd planned to marry. How had we gotten here? The messages kept coming until nearly midnight, each one more desperate than the last. The final one made my blood run cold. "I know you're with him right now. I know where you live. We need to talk." David was already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling the police." Now, as I listened to him explain the situation to the dispatcher, Luna pressed herself against my side, and I realized my hands were shaking. The man sending those messages wasn't the Alex I'd fallen in love with, or even the confused, angry person who'd broken up with me. This was someone else entirely, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I was genuinely scared. The police said they'd do a wellness check and asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes to both, finally accepting what everyone around me had been trying to tell me for weeks. This wasn't my responsibility to fix, and it wasn't safe to try. David stayed the night, and we barely slept. Every sound outside had us both on edge. But as I lay there in the dark, Luna curled between us, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't trying to manage Alex's emotions or fix his problems or wonder what I'd done wrong. I was just trying to protect myself and the life I was building. And maybe that was exactly what I should have been doing all along. Update 5. It's been 2 weeks since the terrifying night of texts, and I honestly thought the worst was behind us. The police did their wellness check, I filed the report, and Alex seemed to have finally gotten the message. His family had him in some kind of intensive outpatient program, and Patricia stopped calling me altogether, which felt like a blessing. David and I fell into this comfortable routine. He'd come over after work, we'd cook dinner together, and Luna had basically adopted him as her second favorite human. For the first time since this nightmare started, I was sleeping through the night again. We even started talking about him getting his own key, maybe spending some of his weekends at my place instead of his cramped studio across town. Then Wednesday happened. I was at work, in the middle of a presentation to some clients, when my phone started buzzing against the conference table. I ignored it, obviously, but it kept going. Buzz after buzz after buzz. My boss shot me a look, and I quickly flipped it face down, but the vibrating was so persistent that I finally had to excuse myself. 17 missed calls from David. My heart immediately started racing. I stepped into the hallway and called him back. He picked up on the first ring. "Where are you right now?" His voice was tight, controlled in a way that made my stomach drop. "At work." "David, stay there. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere alone. You're scaring me." "What happened?" There was a pause, and I could hear him breathing. "Alex was at my apartment. He followed me there this morning after I left your place." The floor felt like it was shifting under my feet. "What do you mean he was at your apartment?" "I mean he was waiting by my car when I came down to leave for work. He looked like hell, like he hadn't slept in days. He started saying all this stuff about how I'd stolen his life, how you were supposed to be his wife, and that he was going to fix everything." I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady myself. "Did he hurt you?" "No, but he tried to get me to come inside with him, said he wanted to talk man to man about the situation. When I told him no and started to get in my car, he grabbed my arm. Hard. I've got bruises." The hallway suddenly felt too small, too bright. "Did you call the police?" "They're here now, taking a report. But here's the thing, he knew stuff about me that he shouldn't know. My full name, where I work, how long I've been in the city. And he knew I'd been staying at your place. He's been watching us." My presentation was forgotten. My clients were forgotten. All I could think about was Alex out there somewhere, knowing where David lived, knowing our routines. "There's more," David continued, and somehow his voice got even more serious. "After the police got here, I called my building manager to see if they'd seen anything suspicious. Turns out Alex has been coming around for almost a week. He told the front desk he was my brother, visiting from out of town, and asked about getting a spare key made." I felt like I was going to be sick. "A spare key?" "The manager didn't give him one, but only because their policy requires ID verification. Alex kept pushing, though. Came back 3 different times." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor of my office hallway, my professional skirt bunching around me. "David, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Stop. Don't you dare blame yourself for his behavior." His voice softened slightly. "But we need to talk about next steps. The police want to interview you about his previous contact, and they're recommending we both consider staying somewhere else for a few nights." That's when it hit me. "Luna. Oh God, Luna's at my apartment. I already thought of that. I called your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, right? She has your spare key? She's going to check on Luna and stay with her until we figure this out." Even in crisis, David was thinking ahead, taking care of the details I was too panicked to consider. It made me love him more, but it also made me feel terrible that his life was being turned upside down because of my mess. I ended up leaving work early and meeting David at the police station. The officer handling our case, Detective Morrison, was this middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened to everything: the Ecuador incident, the previous texts, Alex's behavior at David's building, and didn't once make me feel like I was overreacting. "This escalation pattern is concerning," she said, looking between David and me. "He's moved from contacting you directly to surveilling your new relationship and attempting to access your boyfriend's residence. That suggests he's not accepting the boundary you've set." She explained that while Alex hadn't technically violated any restraining order, because I'd never gotten one, his behavior was enough to support an emergency protective order now. "Given the interstate nature of his previous stalking incident and this new escalation, I think we can make a strong case." We spent the next 3 hours filling out paperwork and giving detailed statements. By the time we left the station, it was getting dark, and I felt emotionally drained. David suggested we go to his parents' house for dinner. They lived about an hour outside the city, and he thought it would be good for me to get out of town for the evening. That drive was probably the first time I'd felt truly safe all day. David's parents turned out to be wonderful. His mom immediately started fussing over both of us, and his dad grilled David about home security systems over dinner. They didn't make me feel like a burden or a source of drama in their son's life. They just accepted that this was happening and focused on how to help. We decided to stay the night there, but around 10 p.m., my phone rang. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry to bother you, dear, but there's a man outside your building. He's been walking back and forth for about an hour, and he keeps looking up at your windows. Luna's fine, she's with me in my apartment, but I thought you should know." My blood turned to ice. David was already reaching for his keys before it even hung up. "We're calling Detective Morrison," he said firmly. "And then we're staying here tonight. There's no way we're going back into the city with him lurking around your building." As I listened to David give the detective Mrs. Chen's information, I realized something that terrified me more than Alex's behavior. I was falling in love with David, really falling in love, and Alex's obsession was threatening to destroy it before we'd even had a real chance. The detective called back an hour later. They'd sent a patrol car to my building, but Alex was gone by the time they arrived. However, Mrs. Chen had managed to take a photo of him from her window, and it was definitely Alex. The circles under his eyes were so dark he looked haunted, and his clothes were wrinkled like he'd been sleeping in them. That night, lying in David's childhood bedroom with him holding me close, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I was going to call Patricia and tell her exactly what her son had been doing. And if she couldn't get him to stop, I was going to make sure the legal system did. I just hoped it wouldn't be too late.